This is Maureen Kafkas, the Brain BS coach, here to tell you about the episode today. So, in this episode, I speak with author Kaleb Dahlgren. He wrote a book called Crossroads, and it's about a terrible tragedy that he endured when he was younger, along with his teammates, the Humboldt Broncos. It's a story of resiliency, love, community, and defying the odds. I think you're going to be as inspired by him as I am. So here you go. Sit back, settle in. Episode 157 of the Brain BS podcast, The Crossroads with Kaleb Dahlgren. Do you want more out of your life, but not exactly sure what that might be? Are you longing for something but can't quite put your finger on what it is? That is the universe speaking to you, and it is time to listen up. I'm your host, Maureen Kafkas, the Brain BS coach. I created the Brain BS podcast to help people define what success means to them and show them how to get it. I help you to let go of fear and doubt and prepare your nervous system for success. I show you how to understand your own energy and to trust yourself to make all the decisions. If you are ready to go inward and stop looking outside yourself for all the answers, this is the podcast for you. Now let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the Brain BS podcast. I have an awesome guest here today. I just met him and I already love him. His name's Kaleb Dahlgren. I heard about Kaleb because I posted in a coaching group that I'm in that I was looking for people who face major adversity and men who inspire me to be on the podcast. And I tried to find it today, and maybe Kaleb will tell us, but it's somebody from Canada who told me about him. And I wanted to mention her in the podcast because she introduced me to him, but I couldn't find it. But she told me about a book he wrote called Crossroads, and something like really a major tragedy that he was a part of, and the story of how he survived it and how he was actually thriving after it. So I decided I had to have him on the podcast, and the timing has finally aligned. We've been going back and forth, and he is here today to talk a lot about his experience and whatever else comes up. So Kaleb, why don't you go ahead and tell the audience what you want them to know about you?
Well, thanks so much for having me on here. I appreciate it. So yeah, my name is Kaleb Dahlgren. I am 26 years old, just turned 26 last month. So happy to be past the quarter life century mark. And for me, I am a student at Canadian Memorial Chiropractic College, studying to be a doctor of chiropractic. I'm in my third year out of four, so I'm almost there to becoming a chiropractor. I also am a huge family man. I love my family, my friends, and family extends more than just blood. I bring in a lot of people outside of blood. That's family to me too. And another piece about me is that I love to have fun, make the most of life, and do one good deed a day. And that one good deed is a minimum, it's not a maximum at all. And for me, I really try to spread positivity throughout the world. I do speaking engagements through various populations throughout North America and in Europe. And for me, it's just connecting with the audience and trying to help them get through tough, challenging aspects, but also find positivity, leadership, and community all within it. So for me, I got lots on the go. I have my own little nonprofit organization called Dahlgren's Diabetes that helps bring awareness to type 1 diabetic children. I also am national ambassador for 3 other nonprofit organizations. So I really am busy in the sector of community service and giving back. But for me, that's what fuels my soul and makes me who I am today.
Wow, and you're 26. That is like amazing. So okay, so I was thinking, and I talked to Kaleb about this before we came on here, because there's so many things I could talk to him about for way longer than the time that we have allotted here. So we came up with a little guideline. And what I first want to talk about with him is the power of parents, supportive parents, in a community, because Kaleb was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at a very young age, and he went on to play hockey. And I want you to talk a little bit about that. Like, I mean, your schools, your community, everyone really rallied around you to help make that happen.
100%. And I was so fortunate to have parents who work in the health profession too. So when I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at the age of 4, it was really difficult and we didn't really know what was going on. I was peeing tremendous amounts. of fluids. I was super thirsty. I drank 4 liters of milk before lunch hit. So I went to my babysitter's at 8 a.m. And then by the time it was noon, I drank 4 liters of milk, went to the bathroom over a dozen times. Something was up. So my babysitter called my dad, picked me up, took me home. And when I was home, he's like, you should go sit on the toilet. He thought I was constipated and he had to let loose of it. And so I went, and within a couple of minutes, he heard the sink water running and kept running, kept running, kept running. And then he went, opened the door, and there I was with my head underneath the tap, lapping water in my mouth with my toothbrush. He's like, that's so weird. Never done this. So he rushed me to Merge, through Merge, poked, prodded needles, and then within an hour, doctor calls my dad in and says, Caleb's a type 1 diabetic and will be insulin dependent for the rest of his life. So that was like a very hard kind of crossroad, the first crossroad that we hit in my life. And it was challenging, but it was nice because my parents are quick learners. They're both nurses. So I was able to leave the hospital quite fast because they understood how to give a needle, how to administer insulin, like all the details that are hard for people to grasp. They got it super fast. So when I left the hospital, I thought I was home free, just to find out that I need another needle after 8, and then another needle before bed, a needle in the middle of the night, another needle in the middle of the night, needle before breakfast, needle after breakfast, and then needle before lunch, and then needle after lunch. And that became my life. So from the very start, it wasn't easy. And I can't say that the community helped me or anything, because in that time, the first 2 months was absolutely hard because being a 4 year old, you have to try to internalize what's going on. How is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? And then how that you can be resilient from it. And so it was find the positives, and the positives that I was independent. I had to mature a lot faster than other people. I had to be body aware. I also had to be mindful that I'm not perfect and it's okay to not be perfect. I also had to develop skills and strategies of how to explain to other people, how to count carbs. Math multiplication tables became a lot easier. There's things that I learned that a lot of people don't even learn in their lifetime being type 1 diabetic. So for me, that was some of the positives and the fact that I can live a normal life. But throughout my career of hockey and playing at the highest level possible, I did get cut from teams because I was a diabetic. I had coaches pass on me because I was type 1 diabetic. I've had people say I should quit hockey and go to bowling or something less strenuous because I was type 1 diabetic. So there's a lot of different things that come with it, but you choose how you respond to those situations. So for me, I had supportive parents, I had supportive friends, supportive coaches who say, you know what, you can do this. Like we're in your corner. And that's what led me to go down the road that I went down. Had I not had supportive parents or a supportive community or people that were saying, you know what, screw everybody else is saying, do what you're doing. Obviously, you're succeeding and doing well. That was very beneficial. And then I know Bobby Clark, who's a famous NHL hockey player with Philadelphia Flyers and now part of the owner of the organization. He was another influential figure in my life who had type 1 diabetes, lived with it, also played in the NHL, and somebody I could look up to. But at that time, there was no YouTube or anything like that. So they just hear of the name and that's it.
Oh gosh, you bring up so many good things there. The part about being body aware, because most of us who don't experience something like you, I mean, I'm 60 and I just got to paying attention to my body about like 2 years ago, like in a way that I trust myself to make decisions from my body,
Yeah.
right? I notice like different things about it, but it's different when you have like that body intelligence and you actually listen to it, and you had to learn how to do that at a very early age.
Yeah. And it was feeling the high and low glucose levels of blood sugars. And so that would be like when I'm high, I feel tingly, I have an increased sense of smell. I smell insulin. I have dry mouth and like tongue is dry. And then when I'm low, I feel shaky, weak, tired. I'm sweaty. I don't have as good as focus, not as sharp. And these are all things that like I had to learn at a very young age, super fast. Because if I was going high, I had to give myself insulin. And if I was going low, I'd have a snack. So for me, it was just correlating that really fast at a young age.
Yeah, finding the balance. Also, I love how you talked about how it improved your math, because I was terrible at math when I was younger, and just how it really helped your communication skills too, because you had to learn how to articulate what it was that you needed to other people at an early age.
100%. And even self advocacy too. If I was in an area where I had issues or I knew something might happen, I had to say, hey, can I have a snack, please? Because I feel like we're going to be going low. To a random parent who I maybe have only met once or twice. Or I have to tell my teacher at school, sorry, I need to pull out a juice box in the middle of class and have a juice box, and having everybody look at you because you're the only one with the juice box in class. So I think there's a lot of different things like that. Even in grade 4, little prime example of story. So I like little Johnny stories. So little Johnny, I was in the bathroom giving myself a needle in the bathroom stall. So little Johnny walked into the bathroom and it was an indoor recess. It was -40 in Saskatchewan. I'm from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. So -40. He walks in the bathroom and peeks through that little crack in the stall. You know the little crack I'm talking about? Either you've got peeked in it or you peeked in there, either or. So I peeked at a little crack in the stall. I saw me give myself a needle. So he started screaming, "Oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness," ran out and yelled to the whole gymnasium from grade 4 to 8, "Caleb's give himself a needle, Caleb's give himself a needle, Caleb's give himself a needle." So then you're hearing people running around, feet just stop to a halt. And you hear like a big gasp, the door slams open, teacher comes running in, "Are you okay? What's wrong?" And at that time, I didn't feel beautiful for being a diabetic. I felt alienated. I was sweaty. I was nervous. So I walked out of the gym and I walked up. People were like, "Oh my goodness, what are you giving yourself a needle for? Are you druggy? Are you sick? What's wrong with you? Grade 4 druggy? Oh my goodness." So at that time, there's stuff that you have to face at a young age that challenged you to build resilience. And so for me, facing these things built tons of resilience, even being called fat. So I was diabetic and I didn't know the difference between type 1 and type 2. Like, there was so many different things that I think a lot of people didn't understand from the type 1 diabetes perspective. Having that community, though, and that support, my parents who were always there uplifting me, saying, "Hey, you're beautiful for your difference. It's okay." Everybody has something that they can't control that will challenge them at some point in life, and you choose how you respond to it.
Yeah, and you know, another really valuable lesson, which doesn't probably feel like it was a lesson back then, is like we spend our whole lives when we're little, when we're healthy and we have the privilege of that, of trying to be just like everybody else because we think we think that's the answer. Like just
Yeah,
be like everybody else. That's how you're cool. That's how you're, but you got to learn at a very early age the value of standing out and being different.
yeah.
And it wasn't even a choice for you. It's always
No,
been there. So it's something like
100%.
you eased your way into as you've gotten older, and now you've totally embraced it.
Yeah. And uniqueness is like your special power too. And that's the big thing about it is like I always viewed it as something that made me unique and special that other people didn't have, but also something that made me stronger too, that other people didn't have. Because I knew that when I was me giving myself a needle every single day, people were most scared of needles. If you ask like a child their biggest fear, they say needles. Every
Yeah.
time it's vaccination time or like you have like yeah, a shot you need to get, they're scared of needles. And so for me, I didn't have a fear of needles. And it just made me like, okay, well, I am unique in that. Like, I need needles to survive. And that's just the deal of it all. Was I needed insulin at some point and administered in my body some way to survive. And that was
Yeah.
through a needle.
Well, I've got news for you. Needles aren't just childhood fears because my husband's still terrified of them to this day. I have to go to physicals with him when he has to get his blood drawn.
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly.
So, all right. Well, okay. So let's talk a little bit before we get into the event that day of what happened on the bus. Let's talk a little bit about sports communities because I am a huge sports fan. I love my Ohio State Buckeyes, my Cleveland Browns, who are never win anything, and the Chicago Bears. So I really love sports, and I always feel bad for people who don't like watching it because I just think, how can you like? I mean, what would fall be like if there was no sports for me? I mean, it just wouldn't. So I want you to talk a little bit about being part of a sports team and how special the Humboldt Broncos team was to you. And just like talk about that a little bit and how fun it was to be with those guys.
Oh boy. So for me, community in sport is so special. I even did a class called Sociology of Sport, and it talks about the social dynamic of sports within the community. And the professor is one of my friends, Rob Nestor, and he ended up grabbing my book because, and having this class read my book because it describes the community so well. So in Humboldt, our community was super special, and it's funny because at the start of the season, you go to a town and you get introduced to the town by the community and they come and rally around you. And what happened was we had a nice little barbecue at the start of the season to welcome the town and us get welcome to the town as well. And there were so many different people that came out to support us. And that was like the first kind of cherry on top where I noticed like how big of a deal the Broncos are to the community, but how big of a deal the community is to the Broncos. It's a give and receive kind of thing. And so when they rally around us, we rally around them. When we rally around them, they rally around us. It's that kind of dual, I guess, relationship. And so
Wait, can I
one of the
just
big
say how what a goofball I am? Because I actually have goosebumps when you say that. And people who don't like sports aren't going to get that at all, but I know you.
Yeah, and it's true though. It's so true because we did the event for the barbecue, but then so many people came out and that fulfilled me of who I am. And so I quickly learned that Humboldt Broncos in the past would go and do Special Olympic floor hockey. And that was like the thing they do on Mondays. So as soon as I found that out, I was 100% in. And every Monday would go and do Special Olympics with the community. And it was so much fun. I made best bonds, and from that Special Olympic crew, I actually had 4 people who actually wanted to go to the games earlier and stay a little later with me, and they became my taxi crew. So I'd pick them up and drive them to and from every home game and make them feel special and unique because sometimes their bus going from the special care home would get to the rink a little bit later. They'd miss the opening ceremonies or leave a little bit later in the game, say it goes in overtime, people had to go home. So then they miss overtime or shootout or things like that. So they miss like I think the best parts of the game. The start, face off, and the very end. And so like for me, I felt bad when I heard that. And they were absolute diehard super fans. So I drove them to and from every home game that I was able to. And I did for every game I drove them and they loved it. Um, but that's the kind of thing that really is special about community is the fact that you think you're helping other people, but in turn they're helping you back even more. And one day we had a practice. It was just before our last game of the season, so we are getting ready for playoffs. We had a playoff spot already, and this was like kind of just like a prep to get us going into playoffs. And our coach Darcy Hogan sent a message to our captain's group chat saying, "Practice is canceled. Tell everybody to bring shovels and boots." And we were like, "What?" So my roommate Stephen Wack and I were in the same chat because he was also assistant captain of the team in that time too. And so I was like, "Okay." Said to him, I was like, "Is this normal?" Was like, "No, this never happens." I was like, "Okay." And I was like, "I wonder what's going on there. I guess it must be shoveling." And there's a huge snowfall in Humboldt community, massive, like I think over 3 feet in one night. And so everybody was like stuck. And our head coach Darcy Hogan said in our group chat, "Shovel your billets driveways and then get to the rink for practice time." So okay, so we all shoveled our billets driveways and then made our way to the rink with shovels and boots. Got to the rink and we shoveled out the whole arena. Then we shoveled out people who were stuck in ditches. We helped people get out. We pulled them out. We also cleaned off driveways for elderly folks who weren't able to. And that was like the best community building event I think I've done in my entire life because it sacrificed our own selves and our own abilities to become better hockey players for the betterment of our community.
Yeah, that's an awesome story. I remember reading about that in the book. Yeah, because it's been a while since I read the book. So you're reminding me that little taxi crew or whatever that you used to play
Yes.
games with, that was awesome too.
Yeah.
Okay, so how about if we speak a little bit to the bond with the actual guys on the team?
So the bond was special. It's one of those, if you've been a part of a championship team, you would know that kind of bond because everybody wanted to work for each other in the room. And at the end of the day, you knew you had each other's back. Like no matter what was going to happen, you had each other's back throughout thick and thin. And that was the bond that we shared throughout that team and in that locker room. And it started at the very start of the year with our core covenant. We were able to really weed out who was a part of our organization and who wasn't based on the core government. And the big thing is, first thing on the whole core covenant says family first. And family for me was more than just my blood. It was my teammates, it was the staff, it was people in the organization. And that was what we truly believed in the dressing room was that we were all a family and that we all put each other first. And when you put other people first and other people put other people first, you uplift each other. And that was what we were. We were uplifting each other. And so I think for me, the biggest piece about our time there was a little story here. We bonded over various things, whether it was like sports drafts, fantasy leagues, if it was about NHL games or highlights. But every Monday night, we would have Bachelor Mondays. And I'm not like the biggest fan of the show Bachelor or Bachelorette, but the biggest thing was that we would all bond over that. And so they came over to my Bella's house. And what would happen is there's about 20 guys out of a 23-man roster. We had three who were in high school at the time who decided to stay and study. But all the rest came over to my Bella's house, and every Monday we'd watch it. And it was because we loved the show, it's because we loved each other. I think that's what spoke volumes, was that we just wanted to be around each other and support each other through everything. And it was such a beautiful kind of relationship that we had there.
That's awesome. Yeah, reading the book, I really felt like I got to know some of your friends on that team, and it was like I could feel your loss too. Not, of course, not to the magnitude that you could, but you really did describe your relationship with them well. And well, let's talk a little bit about the April 2018. Is that the date? Am I right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's tell the audience, because they don't know yet, because they haven't read your book and we haven't really told them what happened that day.
Yep. So it was just normal game day. We were down 3-1 in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League playoffs to Nipawin Hawks, but it honestly could have been 3-1 for us. We had two leads that we blew in the last 5 minutes. That went to overtime. Then Nipawin won in overtime. So honestly, like it actually could have been 3-1 for us. And Nipawin was a top 3 ranked team in Canada the whole year. So like we knew what we had to take in the dressing room, and like we knew what we could do to get to that level. And so we didn't have any like disbelief in our room by any means. So we had a pregame skate, and then we went to Johnny's Bistro, had a little breakfast, then went home, had our little naps, picked up pregame meal and loaded it on the bus, loaded our bags on the bus. And then after that, I sat aisle seat, row 12, which is fourth from the back on the driver's side. Then I did what I normally did. I was talking to my parents. I had previously committed to York University in the U Sports, which is Canada's #1 U Sport hockey league, like university sport league, similar to NCAA Division One. We actually play against Division One teams as well, and good like friendly competition, and it's super fun. I know we played against Niagara University, and we ended up beating them when I was at York University. So we are like extremely similar caliber. And so I committed to them before the crash. And then after that, talking to my parents on the financials about where we're going to live, that kind of thing, how much it was looking to be. And after that, I was just talking to people on the bus, listening to music, hanging out. People were playing cards, people were listening to their own music, people were joking around, having snacks, all that fun stuff that the bus is. I absolutely love the bus. I still do today. And then I like to listen to music and put in my headphones when I do that. And I like to visualize. So what I did was I have a pregame meal, put on my suit, put in my headphones, close my eyes, and visualize. And so when I close my eyes and visualize, I think about who I'm playing against, what role I'm in that night, how I'm going to play that role to the best of my abilities. So that's what I did. I was listening to music, and Steven tapped me on the back. My roommate behind me tapped me on the back and asked, "What song was it?" I told him the song. And then I closed my eyes, put my head down, and boom, everything went black. I woke up in a hospital 5.5 days later, absolutely confused. I was wondering what happened, and when I looked around, I thought I was dreaming. Truly thought I was dreaming. I rolled over to my parents and I said, "Am I dreaming?" They're like, "No, you're not." And it didn't make sense to me. I tried closing my eyes again, trying to fall asleep. Couldn't fall back to sleep. Realized I was in a hospital. I had something around my neck holding me in. And I thought it was really weird. That feels tight. And then I opened my eyes. I was like, "Yo, I'm in a hospital." So the first thing I thought of was that I got checked from behind. I broke my neck. And now I'm in a hospital. Makes logical sense. I'm concussed. I don't remember it. All right. So I asked my parents, I was like, "How'd our game go? Did we win our game?" They're like, "Caleb, what game? Like, what do you mean by what game?" I was like, "How'd our game? Did we win our game?" And I got proceeded to tell that there was a bus crash, and I was involved in it, and I had lost 16 people I consider to be family, and I was one of the 13 survivors. And so I didn't believe them. So I said, "Well, I don't believe you guys." They're like, "Well, this happened. Like, we've told you already multiple times. Don't you remember? I was like, no, I don't remember. So pass me my phone. So they passed me my phone, and I clicked Twitter, and then the first thing I saw was prayers for Humboldt and hashtag Humboldt strong. And at that time, there was Sticks Out for Humboldt movement, there was Jersey Day movement, and I didn't know any of this whatsoever. And so then, not even a minute later, the physiotherapist came into the room. Was like, Caleb, are you ready to go to physio? And I was like, physio? What do you mean physio? And she's like, well, are you ready to go physio? Like, you were there yesterday. Do you remember? Like, we did all these exercises. I was like, no, I don't remember at all. And so what was happening was I was in a state called post-traumatic amnesia. So on April 6th, 2018, what I think happened was our bus collided. Well, I know this for sure happened. So semi-truck driver flew through a stop sign, and our bus collided with the semi-truck trailer, and we both went into the ditch. And so I was sitting in the 12th row. I think I flew up 7 rows, and I had 5C imprinted under my eye. So seat 5C, and I was in seat 12. So flew up 7 rows, had 5C imprinted in my eye, and hit my head, hit the other side of my head, then landed to get the 5C imprint. And then after that, I was walking around on scene helping my teammates, which I have no recollection of this. Once everything went black, I have no recollection of these 5.5 days. I was just told stories by first responders, by teammates, by family of what had happened and transpired in this time. And I was helping people on the scene. I gave somebody my jacket, and then the first responder came up to me, asked what was wrong. I said my neck and my back. He put me on a stretcher. So my name is Kaleb Dahlgren. I'm 20 years old. I'm type 1 diabetic. He loaded me in the ambulance. I said, thank you. Make sure you take care of everybody else. Then I got flown, or I guess rushed in ambulance to Nipawin, where the hospital was, about 20 minutes away from the site. And then air ambulance flown to Saskatoon. And then I was in there for that time that I don't remember. And then I woke up and came out of my post-traumatic amnesia, where you're able to talk and converse with people, but you have no recollection of your thoughts. And so when people are like, oh, I was blackout drunk or whatever that is, I was never had been blackout drunk. But people are talking, but they don't remember what actually transpired. That's the same
Yeah.
scenario for me. And so then
So
after that,
to the outsider, it looks like you're actually functioning, talking, and you're there, but you're
yes,
actually like in a totally different state with that is
yeah,
not really present at all. And then when you come out of the amnesia, it's like, how do you not remember being in physio yesterday,
yes,
right? When you seem like you were following
exactly.
everything. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And like they would ask me what day it was, and I kept saying like April 7th, 2018, and I kept saying that repeatedly, day after day after day after day, because it truly was like that. You see in the movie 51st Dates, that's what it felt like in those days for me, was that was the same day repeating itself.
Yeah.
And so I really didn't know until I finally came out of this post-traumatic amnesia. And so then I went to physio, and they're like, how's your injuries? I was like, I don't even know what my injuries are. So they told me my injuries. So I had a fractured skull, a puncture wound to my skull, a scalp degloving, so this whole side of my head was completely shaved off. I had 5 broken vertebrae in my neck, 4 broken vertebrae in my back. I had blood clot in my left arm and behind my right eardrum. I had muscle, nerve, and ligament damage in my back and my neck. And then I also had and have a severe traumatic brain injury where I shouldn't be able to remember my name or how to write or how to talk. So, based on all of those, I was told that on my way to physio, those were my injuries. And I was like, oh my goodness. I had no clue at all of the severity of them. But the worst part of all wasn't my injuries, is the fact I lost 16 people who I could consider to be family. I found that was the hardest injury of it all. I'd take the physical ones every single day, but it was the fact that you lose 16 people to your family.
Oh gosh, I can't even imagine the magnitude of losing that many people that you love and then trying to figure out how to honor each one in your grief process.
Yeah, well, even like the funerals too. Normally, like the
Yeah.
normal grieving process, people go to their funerals, they feel it, they experience it, they see that they passed away, and then they move on, kind of thing. That's normal how it happens. But I wasn't allowed to go to any funerals at all because I was in the hospital healing from my own injuries. And I wasn't able to go and grieve normally or how people normally grieve. And I'd watch the funerals online, but even online, they weren't as good. And some of the funerals happened like very quickly after the crash. So I remember watching some of the funerals because of my brain injury. And then on top of that, you really like you never like got to say goodbye to them in a sense. Like sometimes when people are passed away, like, okay, I'm gonna say goodbye to my Aunt Jane because I know she only's got another week to live, kind of thing. But it was like so quick, snap of a wrist, it was gone. And so for me, thankfully, before the crash, I always treat everybody with love and kindness and gratitude and told everybody that I care about how much I love them. So everybody knew before they passed away how much I loved them and how much I cared about them based on my actions, based on how I interact with them every day, based on how I say good morning first time they come into the arena. Like I really exude that and like positivity and happiness and checking in on people. Like everybody knew I loved them. And so that wasn't something that I was worried about. And then on top of that, I healed through social media handles. I looked through their old Instagram photos or videos that we had, pictures. And that's why I'm such a big picture and video person is that they capture that moment and that memory. Yes, I like to put my phone too. I don't have it out for the whole thing that I'm doing. But snagging one photo or one video during that time is so special. And like family reunions, if they like, oh yeah, I had a family reunion, but I never got a photo. I'm like, what? You didn't? Because you just know how fast life can change in an instant. And I knew that from a young age. It wasn't the first time that it's happened to me. It's happened to me multiple times throughout my life. And this was another time that happened.
Well, you bring up a really good point about you letting people know that you love them and making a point of living your life that way, because we think sometimes that we're doing that for other people so that they know that they're loved, and we are. But it also really helps with the grieving process when you know that you showed up as the best version of you and the most loving and kind, supportive person as you can to those other people. It almost feels I don't want to say complete, but there's something about it that's way more easier to accept. It's typically when we have conflict or conflicting emotions about someone and they die, that it makes it even harder to deal with the fact that they're gone.
Yep, 100%. 100%. And so for me, like I have no regrets in my life. I have made dues with everybody. I'm okay. And like everybody knows I love them, care about them, that I love life. I make the most of life every single day. And I always have. And I think it really dawned on me to make the most of my life every single day when my personal trainer passed away at a young age, 13. Then almost my dad passed away when I was 15. So like these are things that were built in me before the crash had happened. And I even had like lots of viewpoints, such as to focus on things that you can control before the crash happened. That life is 10% what happens to you, 90% how you react to it. That was before the crash. So all these things that were healthy ways of viewing life truly helped me, I think, grow throughout the crash and turn some negative to something positive to help other people.
Yeah. And I also want to talk a little bit about your brain injury, because I was an occupational therapist for a couple of decades in the hospital setting, and I actually worked with traumatic brain injury patients.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's and this speaks to even more than traumatic brain injuries. You go and you read a chart right before you go in a patient's room,
Yep.
and you get
Yep.
this whole idea of what they're going to be like based on the charts. And there's
Yep.
just always those few people that you go in the room and they do not present anything like their chart. Like you think they're on their last leg and they're like on their way out. And you go in and they're like full of life and they're similar to the same attitude as you and they're totally functioning. It just seems like, how is this even possible? And when you talk about with the fact that it's a miraculous recovery that you have and that you are functioning at the level that you are now,
Mhm.
um, is not a coincidence, right? We know that. Do you believe that? I mean, like this is all of this, like everything in your life set you up for where you are today to be resilient, to be a role model, and to be able to help other people in similar situations to handle it differently in a more spiritual, holistic way and positive way, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you bring that up, and I'll check your brain BS on that one.
Okay.
But because I think there's lots of different elements that we don't know about the brain. And so when the doctors looked at my brain, I had 10 foci blossoms, meaning, for those who don't know, 10 different spots in my brain that had bleeding on it. And it wasn't just like in one section, it wasn't just the frontal lobe, it was literally all sections of my brain that had these spots bleeding. So if you were to look at that image, like you say, when you come in, you're like, that person should be in a vegetative state. That's how it should have been. But I think also there's some aspect of somebody or something that helped me. I think maybe a higher power or like guardian angels or however you want to think of it. Or he's connecting that spiritual aspect for sure. And I also think that I really did have a severe brain injury because I did forget like 5 days. But also, I think another piece to it too is our own resilience internally too, and us
Oh,
being able to have our own resilience. And I also wanted to say that community that was around us, supporting us, truly helped in a big, big capacity. And it's funny to talk about this because we don't know everything about the brain. We don't. And the more and more I learn about this, the more and more that I've learned that we don't know a lot about the brain. And I think it's super cool because what you're talking about, there's this podcast that I got sent by a doctor after. So I saw like this world-renowned neurologist. He couldn't believe it. He called me a miracle. He's seen lots of different people. He's like big on the CTE study. He's like one of the main leaders of the CTE study in football. He's the one who brought helmets to hockey. Like he's like the guy. And when he saw me, he just couldn't get over it. He's like, I've never seen anything like this. You're a miracle. And I got sent a podcast from a doctor about 2 weeks after who said, talking about your mindset and how you view situations. So for me, I never viewed it as like, poor me, why me, this sucks. I'm never gonna recover. I never use never. Never is not in my vocabulary. I always said, I'm gonna bounce back. How do I get better? How do I improve? I didn't even think they had the right image of my brain to begin with because of how I was recovering and how I was breaking records and tests and how I was doing even better than I was before the crash.
mhm.
But then we also know that sometimes things get inflamed in the brain and trigger, which then helps create new neural pathways and your brain rejuvenates. So
Neuroplasticity.
neuroplasticity is huge,
Yeah.
so huge. And we create 8,000 new brain pathways every day. So if we are able to create those pathways in a healthy way and regenerate them in a healthy way with the right surroundings, without not doing alcohol or drugs, which I didn't do any of those before, and then after I didn't do it as well. Like I truly think that we're able to heal from lots of different things that many people claim as like miracles, but it's more of taking the holistic approach of healing rather than, okay, take this drug, there you go, you're gonna be better.
Okay, so now it's my turn to call you on calling me on
Call
the
me,
podcast.
call me, let's go.
Because that's exactly what I was saying, but I guess I didn't articulate it well.
Oh, okay.
So I
Yeah,
totally believe in everything that you're saying. I'm
yeah.
talking about normal societal
Oh,
expectations.
okay.
And
Yeah,
I didn't know what I know now when I worked in the hospital back then. So you had an expectation when you would go in the room. I absolutely believe, I mean, that's what the Brain BS podcast is all about. It's
okay.
about
Love it.
creating, it's you with the thoughts that you have in your mind, those trigger feelings, those lead to actions, and that is what gives you your result in life. And when I say
100%.
miraculous, I mean from you getting the type 1 diabetes at the age of 4, the community support, the hockey team, the bus crash, losing your dad, all of it, as painful as it is was your path to being what you are now. And honestly, you bring up a really good point with the neuroplasticity, because there's another guy that's in this series, in the Men Who Inspire Me series, and he had a massive stroke. And he was told, the first 6 months are critical, the whole 6 months thing. And he's not buying into it either. And he's still continuing to recover 2 years later. So
Yeah.
the mindset, yeah, you're absolutely right. People, and we are so limited by some of these thoughts that we're believing. And we don't even know, this is what I was saying earlier, right? When you
Yeah.
present something as factual, that's not. People actually believe that, and also, since we're here, the healthcare industry also is perpetuating that because it doesn't want to cover the insurance costs of people continuing
Yep.
to have therapy for years and years and years.
Yep.
So yeah, so you have so many potential ways to inspire people now,
Well,
right?
thank
Like
you.
it's
Yeah.
like there's so many different opportunities that you have, and that honestly, I was thinking about your resilience, about your ability to frame this and everything. But like after talking to you here today, and then Dante, who's the other guy, I'm like, that's really an area that has to be explored too, that people have to stop giving up on themselves and
100%.
people giving up on their loved ones, thinking that a better recovery is not possible. Because what if like all this time it's like been bullshit, like it's not even real, and that you can keep
Yep.
recovering? Think of all the people that gave up too soon.
Yeah. Well, there was the podcast that was sent to me talked about a person who believed that they had cancer, and the doctors told them they had cancer. They told their family they had cancer, and they had 6 months to live. And all this person wanted was actually in this kind of same time was told in June that they had only 6 months to live. This person only wanted to make it to Christmas to be with their family, to have their last Christmas. They had cancer and they only were able to make it 6 months. So they started to prepare, they started to live their life and have fun and make the most of it, have the best time with family and friends. 6 months rolls around, made it to Christmas. Then after Christmas, passed away. They did a biopsy on the body and found that there was no cancer, that they died just a natural death. But since their community first thought they were passing away, they believed they were passing away. They were told they're going to pass away. They were told they had this cancer that was very serious that they're going to have passed away from. They were preparing to pass away. They had talked to people, everybody in the whole life and their whole ecosystem told them that they were going to pass away, so that their body just naturally shut down and passed away. Even their thoughts, I'm passing away, saying I'm passing away all the time, they're going to pass away.
Especially their thoughts. That, yeah,
Yeah,
that's law of attraction. That's universal law.
yeah.
If that's what you focus on, and the whole entire community around you is too. Yeah. Yeah. That, what's the name of that podcast so that we can put
I'll
it in?
send it to you after. It was about Dr. Joe Dispenza. It was talking, he was sharing one of his stories that he did a case study on, and that was a case study that he did.
Oh, I know him. Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. I read that book and did his
Yeah,
meditations and stuff. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Super, super
Well,
interesting stuff. And like that's why I want to become a chiropractic neurologist, is to dive deeper into the body, to dive deeper into the brain and how the brain controls the body, and being able to help heal things that people deem as unhealable or that people don't think they can heal.
yeah, well, okay. So since we're on that subject too, I just want to offer something else, that if you didn't have the mindset that you had this whole time, your brain injury probably would be presenting completely differently, right?
Could. It
Yeah,
could. Yeah.
it could.
Yeah.
If
It's
we're
hard to
talking
know.
about the power of the mindset, because a lot of things that happen, your subconscious and unconscious programming is where all your emotions live in your body from everything that you've experienced. So if you're not processing them and you're not feeling them and you're not approaching, and you're not honoring that mind body connection, but you learned at a very early age to honor the body,
Yeah.
and the mind body is definitely in it together. You can't focus too much on the mind or too much on the body, because they're both working together to give you the opportunity. That's where all your potential is, if you make those two parts work together.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right. Well, so is there anything, so tell us a little bit about what you're doing now, because you said you do speaking events and stuff like that. So is there anything, where are you in your school? What you're
So I did after the crash in 2018. I went against the neurologist and doctor's order. They said if I go to university, I'd fail. I had like a psycho, oh boy,
neuropsych?
psychologist, a no, just a psychologist who told me that if I go to university, I go into drugs, alcohol, I'd fail. I'd be back in Saskatchewan within 2 months because I moved to Toronto, which is like 7 million people, and Saskatchewan has 1 million people in the whole province. and that I would get drowned, swallowed, and I wouldn't be able to make it out of there. And so then I thought, well, that was really interesting. Like, you're knowing me, you're talking to me today at this point, at this time. You know nothing about my past, you know nothing about my future trajectory. You're just talking about right now. And so that was like when I really thought about like me being a future doctor and never put a ceiling on somebody's healing. For me, that's gonna be the first thing that you see in my office is I'll never put a ceiling on somebody's healing. And it's so true. As you said in the healthcare profession, there's a ceiling, there's a cap. They only can get to this, they only can do that. That's prognosis, and that's what they generalize. But that doesn't mean that you have to get to that point. Who says, why don't you go higher? So when you said that, I was like, okay, well, I need to control everything I can control. If I go to York University and I fail, great. And if I don't go and I don't, if I go and I don't fail, then what? Am I a miracle or like, then what? So I was like, well, I'm gonna go and do the best I can. So I went to York University, and then in 3 years, I got a commerce degree. I was valedictorian, did a speech for a school. I had most outstanding male graduate athlete for varsity athletics. I did a lot of things that people didn't expect me to do, but I think it was due to my mindset. And I also got accepted into chiropractic college. So I did a commerce degree because I wanted to understand the business side of the health profession. And when I did do my doctorate, that I wanted to make sure that I was able to own my own practice and able to understand the financial sheet and the balance and being able to run marketing and operations because a lot of doctors don't have that knowledge. They only have the hardcore medical. So I did that and I took my electives in sciences. And then I got into chiropractic college and I'm done year two on to year three coming up here in August. And in May of 2024, so next year in May, I'll be treating patients. And then you have a year of that, and I graduate. And after that, I like to do a specialization in neurology, like I said earlier, and become a chiropractic neurologist. And then I would also like to do World Spine Care, it's called, where you go to a third world country and volunteer there. So my girlfriend and I are planning on doing that. We're going to do it for 3 months in Botswana, Africa, and in Dominican Republic. And after that, we'll see where life takes me. I don't know where I want to end up. I don't really want to know where I want to settle down. But for me, the big thing is just living the most fulfilling life. I have done speaking engagements since 2019. That was kind of when I first started it. I did lots before with diabetes, but once I started talking about resilience in 2019, a lot of people were like, "Oh my goodness, like we need to hear more of this," and it really kind of took off from there. And then in 2021, I released a book called Crossroads. That was a #1 national bestseller in Canada and made waves across the world as well. Like there's people reaching out from all different countries reading it. And so today I still do speaking and I still do a little bit about the book. I'll hop on podcasts about that, just asking questions about it. But most of the time, I just try to give back and volunteer. Like I said, I have my own program to give back to diabetic children. That's a mentorship program that I started in 2017 in Humboldt before the crash, and now is past the 5-year mark, and it's still going super strong. It's coming up on 6 years here in September, so super super special, and I still connect with those children quite often, usually like I'd say weekly. And for me, it's just helping them live a better life, and then also do lots of volunteer work in different areas such as the breakfast clubs, JDRF, and Diabetes Canada, and Stars Air Ambulance, who I donated all my book proceeds to.
Well, I wish you would try to find some kind of direction in your life. I'm just kidding. You're doing so much. It's amazing. At the age of 26, I didn't even start college till I was 27 to give you a little idea. But I'm okay with that because my path
That's
is my
fine.
path and I love my path. But you
Yeah.
know what has come out of this conversation that I never expected when I started it, which is why I love doing my podcast and meeting people and talking about this kind of stuff, is I thought you were so inspiring, like because you were this miraculous recovery. But what if there's nothing miraculous about it? And you are just a person who manages their mind so effectively and knows how to listen to their body and to their intuition and inside them, and that this is way more available to so many more people than we think it is. Now that's even more inspiring than the original story.
Yeah, for sure. And I think so too. Like I always view there's nothing different than me than the other person. Literally nothing. It's just the way that I wake up in the mornings, the things that I do in my day that makes me different than my friends. But it's not that I'm a different person. It's not that I'm wired differently or that like I just do stuff different. And that's okay. Like I don't like to go out and party every weekend. I don't enjoy that. I've never really found that super fun. I've never had a stage where I partied every weekend and that was it kind of thing. I've never found that interesting. But what I found interesting was doing gratitude journal, writing down three things I love or I'm grateful for every day. Also enjoy listening to music and have a dance party every morning to get in the good beat, good music, and have fun. I also enjoy working out, being physically active for 30 minutes every day. I enjoy doing one good deed a day, whether that's picking up garbage on the side of the road, or that's me holding the door open, or me texting the family members, telling them I'm thinking of them, asking how they're doing. Me calling up my grandma, like just doing those kind of things, I really find value in. And then on top of that, eating healthy. So much of our diet has effect on us. People have no clue, no clue.
Yeah, I totally
But
agree with that.
diet is so crucial, so crucial. And sleep. I sleep for 8 hours every night for sure, for sure. And it's because we grow during our sleep. Like that's when our hormones release. Like that's when lots of the body functions are through our sleep. And I also take care of myself. I do massage, I do chiro. I do stuff to make me feel my best self physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually.
Yeah, and all of this continues to be a gift of being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at the age of 4 because you learned early on the value of focusing so much on your body and taking care of it and listening to it because you're like and most younger people aren't like that, right? It takes a little while to get to that point for a lot of people and they don't necessarily make that connection to that. It really wasn't an option to you with your type 1 diabetes to be partying every weekend. I would imagine that would have wreaked
No,
havoc on
it
your
wasn't.
body. So that's a blessing in its own way. But okay, so we're nearing the end here. So I just want to make sure that you got to say everything that you wanted to say before we close the episode.
I just want to say thank you. Thank you to you. Thank you to the people listening. Thank you to the people in my life who have supported me throughout everything, the highs and lows. I have such an incredible community, and I feel like with each interaction that I have with other people, I gain from because I take pieces away from everybody. So it's funny how you say, like, oh, was it your parents? Yeah, my parents had a huge influence on the person I am today, but my teachers had a huge influence. My friends had classmates, coaches, community members, even mentors, people down walking in the street in the elevator, like those all have interactions on making me who I am today. And so I just want to say thank you to those listening. Thank you to you, Maureen. I appreciate your time and being able to talk with me today. And I just want to say thank you. Super grateful.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. Audience, I know you learned something valuable here today. I'll see you next episode. Thanks for being here and learning about Brain BS. I hope you enjoyed listening to the episode as much as I enjoyed creating it for you. If you did, please take a little time to do a quick review, give me 5 stars, and share it with everyone you know. If you're actually interested in being on the podcast yourself or have questions about it, you can find me in the Brain BS podcast community on Facebook. See you next time.